The VAR Show. The one place for your weekly football update.
Hola, very warm welcome to the VAR show, the show we talks about all the various major football leagues in detail. Today we are going to continue the theme of interviews, and today we have two friends who came from somewhat similar backgrounds of injury, discovered their love for football and common grounds to help young Indian footballers. We have Sharat and Abhishek with us. Abhishek has been a league winner with Chennai FC in its inaugural 2 years of ISL. Now he continues to be an advisor and mentor to coaches and players in Dream United Football Academy, and Sharat has been a football player turned coach and founder of Dream United FC. So that intro was written by Sharat. Okay, so since you all are involved in a lot of the academy from very young age, so like, what are some of the problems you all come across in when you all see the football in a wider scale?
Yeah, so we did a lot of research before we actually started working together, Abhi and I. I had been working in grassroots football for about 7 to 8 years before I met Abhi. So I was always not satisfied with the kind of results I was getting, or rather the development curve was very slow or very small. And we tried to figure out where we are going wrong and how to tackle the problem from its root cause, right? So I had to do some research, and I figured that why are we not able to keep our development or our work with grassroots or youth football with an accountability factor to it. And that's when actually Abhi told me, after like 7 or 8 years of me doing this work, is when he said, can you tell me what you have done for the last 7 years? And I had no answer. And I kept seeing why that was. It is because of the same culture I came from, or the coaches of my time, or the previous years, right? Nobody held themselves accountable, nor the players had a culture where they could demand accountability from coaches, right? So I did some research and tried to figure out why this was happening. So we looked at the whole point, and in a cricket dominant country like ours, and cricket is generally a rich man's sport, right? So who plays football in our country is one of the questions that came to my mind. And if we look at it, it has always been economically poor class of kids or players who play the sport itself. And what generally happens is, neither are they educated, nor this strata of society is not something that people want to keep accountable for. For example, if a player gets injured, or he's underperforming, or he needs help genuinely, at lower levels, nobody is there to actually fund them or help them progress in their career. And this keeps happening time and time again over generations of football now. We look at players who are playing well, who are doing well, and suddenly they are nowhere to be seen. And we keep seeing this happening, and I try to figure out where we were going wrong for what the reason was, right? It's a very basic thing. It's not even a football factor. It is just how India is. People don't just bother about this kind of a thing, right? So I also wanted to see, like, how can we keep ourselves accountable? When Abhi asked me that question, I also thought, like, why haven't I been doing it? And then I took almost 2 to 3 years. In fact, it took me 2 to 3 years to understand that I have to keep myself accountable. I have to keep the players' development accountable. And it starts with a very basic thing of, can you track, can you record, can you show progress in an evidence based manner, right? So then I realized that, yeah, there is a lot of technology required, there's a lot of personnel required, and the basic thing is that there's a lot of effort. And when you put in that effort is when you will see development happening. And this is not just one coach or two coaches or anything. It should be a culture. It should be a system of, say, a country's football system, which should probably hold, everything accountable for. and then maybe you will see development happen. And then we started getting together and putting small processes and systems together. And then we saw that, okay, there is at least we know where we started and where we are now and where we are heading. Let the development be fast or slow is not a question. We will do what we can, but at least we know where we are heading, right? I think Abhi will tell you more about this because he's always been someone who has even at times we always fight about this thing, and he's always one who's pushed me to do this kind of a thing.
Well, add to what Sharad said, the reason I think I was in this manner or thought process to this came from because I come from a lot of sport. I come from a family of sport, cricket and athletics. So I inevitably played was from athletics, which was actually a great base to work out of for all the athletes. So I actually went on playing professional cricket for a while, but then football was always my first love, which I also from a sports science perspective, which I began to study very early in my life because of a lot of injuries that I had. And didn't really have the kind of personality to support this process. So my eyes kind of opened out when I went to do my rehab in Australian Institute of Sport, and I realized what those athletes were getting versus us, and it kind of made complete sense. And coming from also from a family of medical science, my dad being a doctor, and I was always interested in science and medical related factors. So that kind of led to the pathway to kind of think of what is that, what actually started off with me thinking, why did I not make it at any or multiple sports? Because I actually even took part in the Junior Commonwealth Games when I was a kid in athletics. So I kind of did, like I was servicing all of these regions, but there was always a factor of injury that would turn up. There's a factor of fatigue that would turn up. And if you look at my I think as my personality goes as well, I like to kind of introspect a lot on what a process is. So I kind of started with a journey where I kind of was kind of unraveling what better I could have done as a player itself. For a long period of time in professional cricket, so got an idea of and because of the large Australian influence to this entire system that we have, we got an idea of what actually sport performance is looked at, because Australia and the US are generally the guys who are leaders in sports science for a long time, and they continue to be so. So their culture has always been something that I looked at and I said, wait, these two countries don't really have such a big soccer background or a football background, and then I looked at what their strategy was also from a perspective of how they are developing talent, how are they doing football. So it was, I had this story with Sharad actually very early on as well when we came together, saying it's not really so imperative that everyone needs to be as skillful as a Brazilian. Yes, it helps to have a really skillful couple of players in the team to have that X factor to it. But at the same time, I looked at what the US actually mainly who had done, and I think in the recent World Cup, even Australia has shown what they've done. And the reason behind that was they thought of they looked at everything through the lens of sports science, and they saw it as a factor that they may not be as skillful enough to keep the ball, so they might lose the ball more. Hence, the players will need to go and get the ball more or win the ball more. And they started playing a high pressing game, which required a large amount of volume of running and volume of sprints in there. And my influence into technology was very early on. Actually, Catapult had a huge influence in the way I looked at sports tracking and monitoring. So I kind of saw what kind of mileages they were running, and I can actually put India into that gamut of things what Australia and the US have done. And I could see that if we started at the grassroots and we started looking at factors like these, how do we, because a lot of them spend a lot of time doing technical work, but there's never a progression of that technical work into something of performance. Because the end performance is not just a does he have a great touch? Is his body shape correct when he receives the ball? It's not only that. It's about the decisions that he makes when he receives the ball, the vision he has. At the same time, understanding of the tactical input that comes in. So to do all of this, if his physical components actually support him to do something like that, for example, a right back, if he was having a large volume that he could run, he would be doing a lot more overlaps, which means you could be also pressing up high all the time, right? So the strategy can be extremely different if you have a group of players whose physical abilities, something that you have kind of worked on from a young age, and this development work needs to be because generally we're kind of speaking about development at 15 and 16, which is not a bad period from a physical development standpoint. Actually, we look at that to kind of creep in post 13, but then if the base for a tactical and technical if you say skill set that can be trained by the age of 13, and then you will see the athlete actually be that much more confident to implement what physical aspects that you are going to put in. So if you actually develop them between 13 and 17, that's when they come into the bracket where they can start doing high performance work only after. But without this, what's happening is a lot of our Indian athletes are not ever taken care of, don't have a base at all. And I'm talking over a wide array of sport because I come from a wide array of sport. I've worked with a lot of Olympians from the European countries. So I've seen what this difference in culture has been, and I think I've seen this, and this was the reason where we kind of sat together and we put things together. I said, listen, this is what I've seen and observed outside of the country. And there's enough to, instead of looking at Europe all the time for development, why don't we look at similar systems and where they started and cultures and kind of follow a pathway similar to that. That's actually where we sort of kind of develop the starting point to the academy.
So you spoke of a very important part, the accountability. So since you all are so much involved in the academy, you all will be hiring and dealing with coaches, for the level, that down level. Do you think the general, can I just pinpoint it as the coach education is not good enough for the accountability?
I'll answer that because see, I've been coaching since I was 16 years old because I don't know, I had a passion for coaching, and when I was 16 itself, I started coaching 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds. So I have a very long history in coaching. Though I'm just 34 now, I already have 17 years of coaching experience now. And it was only recently, like about 6 months ago, that I actually did any kind of a coach education program from AIFF or AFC or I don't know. I mean, I think it was from the federation, right? I see that the courses and the programs are really good, but once you do that course, it's probably a 7-day course or a 6-day course. There are very talented and very knowledgeable coaches also who come, coach instructors rather, who come and deliver these modules of coach education. But once the coaches go back from this course, there is no ecosystem for them to actually apply and learn and practically do it and get results from it. That's where we are having the problem, because again, like I just told you the problem earlier, it's not so much about technology or people or money also. It's just a cultural thing, because nobody wants to keep football accountable. I mean, football training or football development accountable. Now we are seeing a better trend that more people are playing football, more grassroots academies are coming in India or in every city basically. And we can say that there is development and coach education programs are good, but that's again you will probably agree with me. It's an Indian education system thing, because even if you look at an engineering degree that you do, you hardly ever study what you go and apply in the real world out there, right? So it's becoming like that now. Even the coach education system has become like that now. It's becoming too much textbookish, which and at grassroots levels it will work. But if you go a little further and look at more of elite or let's say competitive levels, it becomes a one size fits all, and you need really talented or rather well educated people to take this up. And if we historically look at coaches, that's where the root cause which I mentioned earlier, right? They come from poor backgrounds of no education, and these become players and they become coaches. Their general application of these courses is not something that they can afford, or they know how to do it, or at least nowadays what we are seeing is, there are more engineers like yourself probably who are well educated, who have basic education first, and you look at these courses and you start applying them. That's when you will see results. And in fact, Abhi was the one who actually showed me that, even before I pursued my licenses, he had actually seen the material, and he was also part of a what was that All India Football Coaches Association, where he delivered a sports science module for the AFCA license, right? So he also told me that the courses are fantastic, but the application or an ecosystem where it can be applied in, that's where we are probably a tad bit behind.
So I think I saw, because of the time that AIFF had given me an opportunity to kind of do this, a couple of modules because Richard Hood and a few other guys whom I know of who are actually guys who are part of this entire AIFC, the All India Football Coaches Association, coach licensing program. So, which is the A license, I think. And I had been exposed to some of these coaching licenses by our conversations with a lot of coaches prior, probably about 10 years ago. And it was at that point I could clearly see that there was a lot of I would say like a resemblance to what a UEFA A license or a B license has. The content was there, but I don't think the execution of the same thing or the implementation was happening. Also, at that point, I was looking at the coaches who are going to it were not really the same. I had the same aptitude, but this time when I actually got to do a module with them, this was I think last year at the Lions facility that they had the license. The kind of people who had come into the program was so different. There was, I had players also, like say Gurmangi Singh was one of them who were part of it. I knew him from Chennai FC, so I had a close relationship with him. I continue to have the same with him. But I could see the kind of people who were attracted to that program, and the questions they were asking were completely different. There was such a need of wanting to know more in terms of implementation. They saw me and they really wanted to absorb a lot of the information that I wanted to give on the ground. So if I was talking about injury management, but at the same time, what's happened in football is all the programming work is all integrated now with the physical and the tactical and the technical. So the coaches need to understand how to utilize information from different people, different staff that they have as well, right? So when I was there after about maybe just a year, an hour or two into getting there, the kind of questions they were asking me made me understand that yes, there is a great change and a shift that is happening right now. But then when I saw them again, or I met them other time on another occasion afterwards, I realized that they were taking that information. They were wanting to do it. They actually called me and mailed me a couple of times as well. But I could see that they were eager to actually be in a system which was already functioning, which was not available for them. They didn't have an ecosystem where they could go and probably, for example, at the highest level, simple example like say a Carlos Queiroz who was Alex Ferguson's second. But is there a system here where somebody could just go in there and say, I just want to learn and develop. So I want to be. So that's something that we also saw. Me and Sharad saw, and Sharad pointed out saying, this is an area that I think if we initiate doing things now and start developing coaches within our system, they not only have a space to develop, but also there is a cultural, there's a culture that we would start where the coaches are also attached to the club that they're kind of working with. They've been their development also has been part of it. So then it makes a lot more sense when we have a system where they go from being an academy coach to a senior team coach. There is a deeper connect to them. So I think this emotion is something that I've seen binds a lot of them in the clubs that I worked before. I've kind of worked in the Inter Milan Academy, which was luckily one of my first jobs in football, and I could see how deeply even the strength and conditioning coach and the physiotherapist, what it meant to them being in the academy and what the first team was doing. And then I could see the connect that was there. And that was actually one of the things that me and Shah always spoke about, saying that's the thing that we kind of need to work on, building that ecosystem.
So, talking of that, of an ecosystem, you all will know more because you all have been in the street and you all have faced firsthand. And I'm just a keyboard warrior, so I would not know much. How is the grassroots level football and infrastructure in India?
Abhi, you want to talk about it?
You go ahead. I would probably.
Okay. Yeah. So see, a lot of it is made about infrastructure these days, and I'm not really convinced that infrastructure is something that will give you good results at grassroots. Grassroots is there has to be an element of chaos. There has to be an element of randomness in grassroots, and it should be all about volumes in grassroots because it is all about, let's say, kids have to play. Let's not worry where they play. Even if it's on the street, in their apartment, down the street, doesn't matter. They just have to keep playing. There has to be a scouting system where we see that, okay, there are few players who are good and we have to take them to the next level. Right? That's when all these infrastructure, technology, all these other things come into play now. But now what has unfortunately happened in India is everything has become about infrastructure now. And that's kind of where the disconnect is, because everybody thinks that if you have good infrastructure these days, you essentially get good development. And now it has been about 10 to 12 years since we've had good infrastructure in India, especially at the national team levels. You had fantastic infrastructure. You had all these foreign coaches as well who gave you good systems of theirs. And there has been considerable amount of money which has been put into infrastructure now, and you can't give that excuse for the national team anymore because it's been such a long time now. And the same and probably the misinterpretation of infrastructure in grassroots is something which has diminished our quality of playing football, because nowadays grassroots football isn't even available for everyone to play. So only who can afford can play football. It's almost coming to that now.
So I think we had Sharad says very, very important points with regards to how infrastructure is taking such precedence. I understand this actually also I saw a trend with the cricket as well. What happened is I come from a part of Bangalore where we didn't really have much infrastructure in terms of like playing leather ball cricket. Okay? And because of that, even my exposure to leather ball cricket was very late. But if you see now, there are so many of these little academies who just need to put up nets have all started up. But what that has caused something which we call as early specialization. And this is a huge risk that we are running without having an understanding of what early specialization can do. Early specialization in for anybody, in many kids, actually causes a lot of injuries later on in their lives.
Yeah.
So playing too much of structured football at a young age actually can cause early specialization, because they might be very good in playing just in one side of the pitch, and they might just get settled playing only on the right as a right winger. But in a development aspect, when you look at it, his eyesight and vision can be altered just because he's playing only one side all the time, and he might be crossing from only one side all the time. And these things add up to a larger dysfunction later on, which might be too late to address at that point. So this early specialization has not only caused this issue of injury, but also I've seen that they also lose a lot of interest because it's too structured too early. There has to be a good element of play and these small, like the gully football and all these small touch football that we play near the house, and all these things were very important skill components that make players street smart. But the same street smart ability goes a long way in making a decision for a center midfielder when a ball is played to him and there are two players rushing at him to make a very skillful touch. Actually playing in these small situations gives them that ability. So now doing such early specialization might kind of might limit the possibilities that a player can develop. And so we've kind of seen this being an issue right now from the last 5 to 6 years at least, which I have been observing football in India, has been that a lot of them have been investing in infra, but not really having a structured program to utilize the infra to the maximum amount, or even having personnel who can probably look at maximum utilization of this. So both ways, there is either there is an infrastructure there where they think people will come and play, but there has to be a progression, and it comes back again to this whole accountability thing that we were talking about, saying what happens at say under 9s, what happens at under 12s, what happens at under 13s. So we progress on. If there is a whole system that we put in place where there are certain factors that each coach is accountable and is accountable for the development of say 5 or 10 players out of a group of 25, then you start seeing that there is a progression that can be mapped, and that's when you can go back season after season and saying this is what we did and this is what we ended up with. So how do we make the process better? None of that is logged, none of that is monitored. It generally becomes difficult. So when you see this happening at the grassroots, we kind of see a disconnect. Either there are a lot of people just investing into infra, or there are just people just doing academies for summer camps and closing up with it. So it's doing great for the interest of sport in terms of a lot of people wanting to play the sport, which is really really good. Especially Bangalore, if you see the number of 5-a-side pitches that have turned up, wonderful. I have seen so much of interest. A lot more. The younger kids are playing a lot more football. I think it's a better development sport than anything out there. But I can see that also causes this whole early specialization injury issue. A lot of one-sided or narrow vision play, if I can put it in that way. So we start seeing these kind of things come up with this.
So as I was saying that you spoke about how everyone is focusing on infrastructure, and maybe that is not the correct way, or something you all discussed and you all found that is not the priority. So according to you, how can we improve the youth football, or how can we maybe improve the football in general?
So the answer is simplicity. Keep it simple. Work on the ecosystem. Work on getting more kids to play, rather than investing on infrastructure or these things. Give a platform and make. It's not just a football problem. It's an Indian cultural problem, as to saying sport should become a way of life, right? Nowadays, if you look at the fitness industry, everybody wants to run these marathons to keep themselves fit, right? And they do it at the age of say 30, 35 when they are feeling not fit. Now this wouldn't be a problem if you start playing when you're kids, right? So football is one of the sports that probably needs, or it's the most popular sport in the world. So easy to play, and it should be more accessible to kids. And when that culture comes in, you will see that the development will be a byproduct of what we do, or what we sow really at the grassroots level, right?
Similarly, like, do you think, like, how you said, like, people want to get into football, like, is it like financially, like, okay, I'll speak of that later. Like, I also stayed in Bangalore for quite a while, okay? So in a place like Bangalore, there are not grounds left to play. Actually, like, the reason maybe I focus on infrastructure is because, okay, like you said, it's although it's a poor sport in comparison to cricket, you need to have grounds to play. And nowadays, you take it from top of arbor to everywhere you have grounds where they take a lot of money. Like, you hardly find grounds which are cheap. So do you think that hinders the progress of players?
The answer is yes and no, because see, now we are looking at a lot of places where kids can play. We already said that we need to have a structure of coaching and a system which will feed into the youth and senior levels, right? We have to work more on that level, on a basic level of coaching, or tracking or tracking progress, or recording things, and accountability again. So if we start doing this as a process and system, you will see that automatically, as grassroots graduates to youth, we will see that okay, there is a level of understanding of the game which is worth investing in, right? Now what we are doing is we are just making a lot of facilities available, and not necessarily giving everybody a chance to access those facilities, right? Now only somebody who can afford it can access these facilities. That's what I'm getting at.
I think it's a good point that you brought up, Ashish, about how grounds have opened up. Like I spoke earlier as well, I told you that it's kind of it's done great in bringing a lot more interest into the game of football. I see a lot more younger kids who are playing football than cricket for sure. Cricket just has a great wider base of people in different cities also playing. It's just that it's been there for long. It won't be too far-fetched to think that in India, cricket and football will be on the same amount of number of people playing the sport as well. When it comes to looking at number of people, it'll be in the same level very soon. And because I can see just in Bangalore and how the culture has shifted. Like I said, I've been someone who's been in sport all my life, literally from age 10. So I've kind of been like that Bangalore boy who has been in the Indian sports system. So I kind of understand how before there were segregations of Bangalore that people used to come and play football here. So I remember there were many common places with me and Sharad that I've actually gone and played, but we didn't know each other at that point. That's all. But there were like certain hubs where we used to go and play. This whole five-a-side culture that has come up, which is great for football for sure. But if you ask me from my perspective, I think it was too many facilities too soon because nobody's been able to keep track of the surface that is being put in there. There are certain norms that needs to be followed using artificial surfaces in terms of water in the pitch, because currently I at least have at my facility in Bangalore, which I have a lot of people coming in with injuries. It's one of the things that I kind of specialize in, right? So the number of the frightening bit is a lot of kids who are walking in under the age of 17 in a month. I at least have 25 to 30 under 17 kids walking in, and it destroys them when they actually get injured with ACL injuries at that, because they just cannot overcome it mentally to go back to playing. So when you see this at this point, that's when I have the question saying, has it actually done really good, or is it going to disrupt a culture which is being built? You're not going to suddenly get kids who are being born with stronger ACLs. It's not the cause for it. It's just that it's such an unstructured amount of play to it, right? Sorry, sir.
Just to add to that, so it's become a business of infrastructure rather than the business of football.
I was kind of getting to that point. I was saying that so the infrastructure has done great. That's why when Sir said yes and no, that's why we're looking at saying number of people speaking to us about football is so much more. We love the fact that's happening, but at the same time, there is so much of unstructured or tracked amount of players are just going out there and playing. There's so many of them playing 7 days a week of football, which is great because as kids we want to do it. But if you play 7 days of football on the artificial surfaces, the probability of injury is just around the corner, and a bad injury which they might stop playing football itself. And so this has become such a business now, because they can see from a business standpoint such a viable business to just put out a surface, and there are so many people who are doing it, but nobody's taking responsibility of what's happening to the players who are coming and playing. And I think this is something AIFF should actually look into when looking at approval as well for grounds like these, because there are many places that put up pitches, but no regulatory norms of what kind and what needs to be put and what maintenance work that needs to be done for it, because nobody is really there to look at that aspect.
So on that, I'll ask you, I really do not know much about the youth scene of football in Bangalore and or in India, like what happens, what are the leagues that are playing. So how is the youth league, or what do they have competitions, and what is the quality of competitions? The only youth or kid football I've seen in Bangalore is you have those camps, right? Boca Junior camps, you have those Arsenal camps, Barcelona Academy somewhere. So how is do they have leagues, or what is it like?
Yeah, so there is a new initiative that AFF has come up with called Baby Leagues, which is fantastic. Um there is a set amount of games. I mean, there is about 40 games that these baby leagues provide for, and they've made an economically viable system as well for introducing more game time for kids. And it's a new initiative. I think that will bear fruit at least 10 years from now. But the current existing youth level competitions, when I talk about youth, is under 13s, under 15s, and under 18s, which are actually competitive levels. When we look at those, there still is a problem. There's a major problem that exists because it's not affordable and it is not accessible to everybody. So there should be, when I talked about the business of football, right, it should be a sustainable or a profitable thing for a club to invest in a certain thing, right? Now when a club chooses to say, let's put out an under 13 team, under 15 team, let us develop them for 5 6 years or 7 years or 8 years, when they actually get into competitive environment, there is no return for the football club. There's no enough viewership, or there is not enough returns that is coming from any of the sources. So what has basically happened at under 13s, under 15s, and under 18 levels right now is that the clubs levy those charges on the players itself. Okay, now that tells you a lot, saying, are these the actual players who are the most talented, or are these the players who have access and can afford it? So it's become that. That's why we are seeing that. I had a very interesting statistic, and I also went on to buy a professional team in Bangalore about 2 years ago, and I did a lot of research on that as well. We look at the various youth leagues have been around for about 6 years now, if I'm not wrong, from 2014, and we see that I can give you the exact number. Actually, it's about 360 professional level players that play in Bangalore Super Division, and there's hardly 50 of them coming from one of these youth systems. Now, for the last 6 years, if it has existed, even if you look at under 13s, even if somebody started playing at under 15s, let's say under 15s, over 6 years, it should be 21 now. Where are those players? Why are they not competing in the professional level? That's my question. And I can vouch for the fact that if you do the simplest things right, in a matter of 2 years, Abhi and I, whatever the system we put together 2 years ago, in 2 years, we have had 43 players who have played the senior level for us. So it's very simple. It is not, and it didn't take a lot of investment either for us. It was just getting the basics right and doing the simplest things right. So to answer the question of the quality of these leagues, we can't really say, because only some clubs are able to invest in this process of, or let's say, playing this competitive league. But do you have overall good competition? I don't think so.
Well, I think I made sure to discuss the point of how much of investment goes into a player versus a player being bought. I think this is something that we spoke about, saying how the cost.
That's the next topic we are going to discuss.
Oh, really? Sorry. Okay, no, but basically it kind of fits into what we were thinking about, saying why are players not being invested into, and why the same thing happens in other countries, especially after having a lot of work experience in multiple sport in different countries. I have kind of seen, because it's what's driven me is always to see high performance from not just from from under 17 level to a pro level, but I've seen if we do the development better at 15, the base is so solid that I can do anything I want at 17 in terms of high performance, right? So we've never even got into the gamut ever. We've suddenly taken players from there and put them in. When Chennai FC began, I remember day one, the players all met me, and I had no coaching staff. I was standing all by myself in the Bangalore Football Stadium. A blue bus, not even Chennai FC, a blue bus arrived, and JJ and all these guys got down, and I was like, that was day one of Chennai FC, and we had actually not even decided the name of Chennai FC on the day. But this is how we actually started. Suddenly, I was entrusted with a lot of players who never ever had been taken care of. I was asking them basic stuff that I normally collect from a lot of athletes is how they're feeling in the day, like sorenesses. There's a rating system that we follow to look at well-being of an athlete, which is a subjective score that they fill in every day morning. And then we collect a score which says how hard the session was, which is again goes into a technical database in which we plan and monitor training loads. And they were also alien to it. Everyone was so close because everything before that has been built around fears. They've always been building. They've been handled by their injuries being handled out of fear. They normally told them to go to the and this is players who play for big clubs. I don't want to mention these clubs, but they told them to go to the sideline, make up their mind, and come back to play. And these guys were severely injured. So when you see things like that, so when I was asking them, they kept looking at me saying, "Why is this guy asking this?" And kept telling me, "Will you give the coach? Will you give the coach?" And though it was Marco Materazzi, which was the manager and the coach there, just the whole system took me a year. That's why first season we had about a 15-day preseason. We can't really build, and I had a lot of older players coming from other countries. So we had a lot of injuries, almost about 36 to 38%. But second season, we ended up with just 2% soft tissue injuries. And you see the resultant of it was we won the league by winning 8 games in a row. So, and the shift that happened was just that players began to trust the system, saying, "Oh, okay, this is why he's taking the information." So it's just a lack of education that these guys have on what performance really means. There are a lot of inhibitions that have been set in how they've been playing football before. Everybody's been playing on their fears all the time, just to manipulate them from a psychological perspective. When they put them in a safe environment, and because I was with them the second season as well, they had already built an equation with me there. They knew that it is safe to come and tell me what was going on. We saw completely different stuff. I literally saw an opposing change in the second season itself. They were volunteering to come and say, "Listen, I want to do this. What do you think I should be doing?" The food habits. Earlier in the first season, I had to put a structured nutrition plan. Second, I saw them choose better by themselves. So this change does happen within the season itself. I saw a massive change in one season itself. So that it's just that we need to have a system that allows for these athletes to express themselves. And that's generally what I think is missing.
So Sharath, let's get on to the next topic: cost of buying versus maybe producing talent.
This is our favorite question because we talk about this on a daily basis, really. Because we always talk about how this player is doing and how that player is doing and how this match went or that match went or how the tournament went or how did the league go. Right? When we look at those things, we always come back to the fact that, okay, could this player have done better, right? And we keep coming back to why is it that we are not seeing more development. Obviously, when we start training our players, we want maximum output from them, right? So we keep saying, okay, can we do better? And how are the others who are competing in the same league doing better without coming from the system where there should be a mix of, say, we'll buy these many players and develop these many players, right? So look at the Indian football ecosystem as a whole. It's always been about luck by chance. Players just keep playing, and there's no real structure to saying who will graduate to a youth level, who will graduate to a senior level, right? So when professional clubs look at making teams or looking at signing players, there is more of these luck by chance players that make it than the ones we develop. And the reason again is the same thing. Can we put enough into our grassroots and youth systems? Probably that cost is higher than just getting a ready-made player. Ready-made when I say it's luck by chance. So the factor of luck by chance versus structure is still very skewed in our country. So I actually dig down and found out some more data about the Professional League of Bangalore. See, I've been doing a lot of research about leagues across different states in India, right? So even taking feedback from players who have played in different state leagues, all pointers point towards one thing, that Bangalore football is something which is growing at a very fast rate and is benchmarking very higher than many of the other states right now. And even the fact that BFC are the front runners in this, we can pretty much see that the competition that BFC gives for other clubs in Bangalore has raised the benchmark of quality of our league by higher levels, basically, right? So when I actually dig down and did some more numbers, I saw that there are out of the 350 odd players that played the professional league of Bangalore, there was only about 60 or 70 of them who came through any kind of an academy or any kind of a structured process. So that's one of the things that we also want to solve now, and we are constantly in that process of seeing what is the cost of development, what is the cost of buying, right? And that's becoming a culture now of buying. When the culture of buying becomes more, there's lesser and lesser hope for structured development. And if you don't have a philosophy of playing, then you are always at a random place and you won't know what you're doing. And even your grassroots or your youth will not have a connect with your club at the end of the day.
Even in developed football systems, right? With, say for example, Anderlecht. Anderlecht used to be a competitive football club who used to be looking at position in the league, and their first curve when Anderlecht went in Belgium was that the first curve was that they started investing as a club into infra and also into being a competitive club, but very soon realized where they stand in terms of financial situations and everything in the whole European system. Okay, and now if you see, they have become a top level feeder club, which is termed as a feeder club. But it's also because now when the cost of a player is 50 million, then the kickback from even a sale of a player to a big club is sufficient enough to invest into processes of development, right? So, but since the money that has been exchanged is so large, that's when we can even think of academies being developing players to sell players or have a system in which we can develop and have players move out of them and in a structure, right? So, but at the same, if you look at where we are, if you see a lot of clubs because I know for a fact when Chennai FC signed a few players from the Northeast, I met a few players who had been bought in. They had been bought for very, very, very minimal amounts. And this is a shocking thing because there's never a comparison between the salary of a coaching staff. I'm not talking about head coach, not even head coach. Managers is a different bracket. So say the coaching staff, the medical staff, and all of that. Then if their salaries are actually more than the players, there is definitely a question mark there saying, well, how do we handle this? That is not even comparable when you are in other countries. Okay, I understand our systems have not gotten there, but because the cost of buying a player is so low and the cost of having a player in the system is so low, they are never going to look into investing in development. When there is a shift in this cost is when you'll start seeing people invest into development, just like Anderlecht did. They went back. That's why I give an example of Anderlecht. They started realizing there is a business where they are getting large amount of talent walking into their grassroots program, which they saw as a viable plan as to be a feeder club. So to make such a decision, it's more easy to do it at that point.
Now, see, I don't have a problem that there is a culture of buying more, or it's not really a huge problem at the moment. But what is the bigger problem is now let's say directives from AIFF or the thought process, or I've had the fortune of speaking to a lot of these top coaches or educators or administrators from the AIFF, and when I look at what they're trying to do, that's where the problem lies, because their whole thought process is about we have to play more matches and you will get development. Like it's more of a copied system from say Europe or somewhere where in a small town there will be 3,000 or 4,000 clubs. No matter, you can play a league probably every day of the year, and that's one of the things of playing more football, getting more match experience, being street smart. All that is fine, but again, what they fail to understand is once they graduate from here, there is really, really high level of structure. And there is a lot of discipline that goes into the next level, right? So the problem-solving process which we are looking at in India is probably the problem. Meaning the whole shift is towards let's play more matches, it will happen. So that's one of the problems that I'm seeing in the recent past.
Yeah, so that even I felt, but don't you think like the amount of games that we're playing is less, and you need to improve that? I mean, that is not the only way of developing, but like that also is one of the major part, right? Because if players are simply
Absolutely.
not playing enough, so
Absolutely. Now,
even if you develop maybe 1,000 Neymars, but if they cannot showcase the talent, it is never going to work, right?
absolutely. So the point I'm trying to make is playing more is at the grassroots levels, right? Now, when we talk about youth levels, it's not just about playing more. There you need structure. Youth levels and competitive levels, I mean, right? The thought process should be where now, okay, you are playing enough, that's good enough, but what are you doing at the youth level? What are you doing at the professional level? Again, the bigger problem lies in even at youth levels you're buying. Even at the under 13s, under 15s, we look at most of the private academies that are there in Bangalore or elsewhere, right? What they do is there is a bunch of players who train throughout the year, and then they figure out that they're not good enough to play at some level or say I League youth levels, and they just head out to Northeast or here or there or wherever there is a good amount of talent available, because they want to win at any cost. And winning is not a priority at youth levels. At youth levels, it should be all about learning, and having a more learning attitude towards becoming professional. Now, if you want to win at any cost, you want to buy at youth levels also. Where are we going there? So what now? There has been grassroots for a very long time now. Grassroots is not a new concept in India anymore. It has been around for about at least, let's say, considerably at a higher level from the past 5 to 6 years. So that's good enough time to actually develop an under 13 or an under 15 team. Now, what is the root cause of this? The root cause is our basic coaching or our lower levels of grassroots coaching. Our philosophy or our way of thinking itself is wrong.
Coming to this point, I'm a huge fan of the Belgian system. And I don't know if everybody know about why there are so many Belgian players in so many leagues, and to see the Belgian national team, most of those players are stars in the clubs that they play. Okay, and this didn't happen by chance. It's not like, but it was a conscious shift that happened 10 years ago, or a little bit longer as well, where they looked at they said we're going to start playing a more structured youth league, and in the youth leagues, what they started to prevent this same issue that was there, where players have been bought even at the youth teams and then shifted off, because everything was centered around results even at the grassroots level, which is an absolute criminal thing to happen. And so what they did is they had a winner-loss situation. There was a winner and a loser in the system, but there was no ranking or no standing of clubs in the league. So there would be 20 teams playing in the league, and for example, but there's not just because there's no point system in it. There's just a winner or loss. There are a lot of games that is being played, and the winner loss is based on how the player's development is going to happen. So they take a match situation where there is obviously going to be a winner or loss or a draw, obviously. But at the same time, there was no points given or allocated for it. So there was no first or second position or third position. They were just listed alphabetically. So now you see the difference of a simple step like that right now. And I look at that simple step and say it makes the whole difference in an Indian system, where the coaches will stop worrying what position they play, rather than they focus on whether winning the game or yes, but there is no result for it. Right? There is a result for the game, but there's not really influencing their position. So I think when you see that, then the focus will shift into actually developing players and not really about just results, because it can't happen at the grassroots level.
So I'll tell you something more. We actually took this concept and put it in the professional league of Bangalore, so which is a very decent level to compare or let's say even evaluate something that we have done. Right? The whole philosophy about buying and making a team versus our way, which we did only for the last 3 years, let's say. in the 3 years, I told you about how many number of players that we produced and played the professional league of Bangalore, right? What really happened there was we did not focus on winning any matches. It was not a result driven or a scoreline driven approach that we had in these 2 years of the league. We just said we need to sustain in the league. We'll do enough. Of course, we don't want to just come down after buying a professional team. Right? So we wanted to see that, okay, we will make sure we will win a few matches. But most importantly, it should be about we have to get players to play higher levels or gain experience. That was the motive behind playing the 2 years of the league. And now if you see, after 2 years, do we have a fan base? Yes, we do have a fan base. Because is the football we play attractive? Of course it is. Did we finish high up the league? No. But we can see that there is a connect between the academy and the club now. And we can see that everybody who is involved in our club actually comes to watch our match because it is all our own, right? So people come to watch when there is a connect between the club and the structure and the philosophy. And what you actually put out there on the pitch is a result of what you do at the training ground. When you buy a player, you're already in a place where maybe if the quality is good, they will come and watch. If it's not, then you have no hope. And I'm talking about quality, which you will compare with European standards, because that is what is available on TV. Why would somebody come and watch you in the stadium if it's not good enough, right? At least this way, if you have a connect between your fans, your academy, and your club, at least you will have some kind of viewership, which will turn out to be a return on your investment someday in the future.
Okay, you said about you touched like in the whole part we at least discussed about, I think so, about we should have a very sustainable ecosystem, like in the long run, so that no one faces loss, because you can only, like how you said the Belgium one, you can only do that when people are ready, like to pump in money, maybe from the government side or someone has to pump in money so that someone actually basically has to bear the loss, so that there is no competition, because that's the whole point, because you require money to survive, and most of them, yeah, you like the game, but no one is doing charity. Hardly people come and do charity like okay, I'll just invest. That happens very less. So you also put out a very good topic that you wanted to discuss, like how can you make the football in India very sustainable, through marketing and all those, and which will probably take the hit of maybe the youth development.
So the marketing aspect of the football is as important as your structure or your training or your playing, because what exactly is marketing? Marketing is making our own heroes, creating our own heroes within the club, or making our own stars, right? There is a, I don't know, it's again, I don't know if it's a football thing in India. It's a general thing. In India, we don't necessarily support people around us, or there is no community connect in our country. Now, if you look at say in England or any other European or a US community as such, if somebody is playing a sport, the entire community make sure they watch it, right? And say a football team would go and watch a cricket match in which is happening within their county or within their community. That is probably something which is missing from an Indian culture thing. It's probably not even a football thing, right? So what do we really market here? So we have to consciously make an effort to show everything that we do in training, that we do in the matches. And if we look at that, that's happening only at the ISL level. And now if we go down into youth I leagues or youth tournaments, where is any kind of marketing being done there? So what we do for marketing is, see now, if I have to tell you about how much of work that goes into it, I have 3 years of data or 3 years of videos of our players playing. So that's actually our marketing material, because from level A to level B, we have brought a player. That is something of great pride to us, and that is what will connect our grassroots saying, oh yeah, there is hope that we can play. But if you look at ISL or I League teams, you go down the ladder, there is no promotion at all. And the whole fact circles around the same thing. We want to buy rather than develop. We don't want to create our own heroes. We don't want to create our own stars.
Abhishek, you have anything to say on this?
It's not really my area of expertise, to be honest, not really itself. But this was a whole process that I kind of observed how Sharad took reins of this thing, and so that I can see the kind of interest and the kind of reach. And people always speak about when we speak about marketing, the kind of reach that you have. Yes, it's great to look at from a sponsorship. So I know that is something everybody knows. Is able to get better sponsors because we have a large enough reach, right? But at the same time, I look at it also as a great platform to educate the wide audience on what is the right thing to do. Okay, so and this is something that Sharad and me have always spoken about, saying the marketing plan needs to be about education rather than anything. We need to reach the right kind of audience and reach enough, but at the same time also educate these guys. It should be about education, and inevitably you'll see that there is a large amount of interest for your club. A lot more people will come in, and I think in the last few years when you've seen we've done trials, we've had year on year better kind of talent walking in, and it has happened organically. It's not that we went about promoting things at a particular place, but it happened organically because people out there are still looking at it's a great medium, yes, to access information. Social media has made all of this possible, so to reach a lot of audience very easily. But I've seen how Sharad's built his profile, and I can see the kind of connect and the kind of questions the kids are asking online are exactly the need of the hour question, saying, where can I just go to become a player? It need not even be a professional level, but I just want to go to being an ecosystem. And people are reading about it, looking at it. They're looking at foreign clubs doing this thing. They're looking at Barcelona they're putting up their training programs now. And suddenly there is one club in India which is doing similar stuff and putting all of the content. So there's so much of interest in seeing what they're doing right. Because we have never been a culture where we've had enough money or even technical staff to do grassroots development where it needs to be. What has happened is the parents and the kids have taken it upon themselves to do the research and try to. There is good to that, like an education standpoint, but at the same time, there is also the flip side of it is you will start seeing a lot of wrong that is being done, which they may not be able to work on their own. So in other countries, they just need to know that they need to go to a particular club in their community, and everything is going to be taken care of. So if we build an ecosystem like that, so to make it sustainable, to feed these processes, obviously we need to reach enough people to have enough money coming in from a sponsorship standpoint and everything, because it's not really I'm not really want to go deeper into the sponsorship standpoint because it's not my core expertise. But I can see, and I've been looking at what other clubs are doing. I think our ISL clubs can do a lot more than what they're actually doing, because being part of their system, I know that there's actually not really grassroots development plans. It's been portrayed as grassroots development plans, but I guess again, having the finances trickle down all the way to the grassroots from the senior team is something that will take time to happen. But I think if it's a standalone club and not a club competing at the highest level, like how Dream United is, so I think we will see that it will be a good step to kind of reach enough people and have a lot more education going out so that we can even attract the same kind of people or the same mindsets to us, because that's a really, really critical aspect to it.
So the end game about good marketing is about getting viewership and sponsorship, right? So when there is enough sponsorship and then when there is enough viewership, we can create that ecosystem of world-class processes, which will eventually feed into making a national team. And every club should probably continue doing this, or and take an approach where you create your own, right? Create your own players. I'm not saying you don't have to buy at all. You will have to buy at some point, right? There should be a mix and match, but at least create a core system which you can say it is your own, which fans can connect to, and then we can look at some of the more glamorous which you want to buy, glamorous players that you want to buy, and create more viewership and more sponsorship. But the end game should be tackling it at the grassroots and youth levels, and that requires a lot of money. Where do we put that money into? That's the end game. End game is about having enough money to make sustainable systems. And for us, it has always been about investing in sports sciences. And when we talk about sports sciences, it has been always about the technology, the personnel, and to just manage a team of 30 players, there's at least 40 professionals required if you want to look at a world-class system, which in our country, one, nobody wants to do it right now because buying is easier. And second, do we have enough qualified people to do it here in our country? Now, even if you look at ISL teams, they're always buying foreign coaches or foreign expertise, which is much more than what an Indian system would cost. Now, again, it's a question of buying or developing, right? So if we start the process somewhere, we are going to get to a place where we can make world-class systems. And when we talk about what is a world-class system, what comes to your mind? There is no one system which can be called world-class. So what is your strengths? What is your weaknesses? If you have that clarity, the holy grail of making a world-class system is about having clarity. Clarity in what is it exactly that you want to do right from the base stages of grassroots. If you have a plan to say in a period of 5 or 10 years, I'm going to achieve these things, you will have players who will be of world-class quality, who can play in any who will be comparable to any leagues, any European or any foreign leagues, and then you will get the viewership automatically, and then you will have sponsorships, and then you will have a regular turnaround of the whole ecosystem growing.
I think a simple example of clarity with Sharath, which is an extremely important point Sharath actually spoke about, is Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp just defines clarity. How everyone's like, oh my God, he predicted 3 years later we'll win, and it's just so clear in what. That's why the players go out there with a clear-cut thought in their mind of what they need to achieve. And if it comes from the top like it is, and it again boils down to him being accountable to his actions right from being a manager, right? So he's very clear about saying this is the pathway the club's going to be. This is how we're going to recruit. This is the kind of personnel we're going to get. This is the amount of investment that goes into developing talent. This is what goes into talent ID. So if he's clear about what he wants to be 3 years and 5 years down the lane, everything else just falls in place. And the Liverpool system now is just such an exemption. I'm a Manchester United fan. For someone like me to even speak about Liverpool in a big way, but I'm a football fan first, So, and someone who comes from sports science, it's so. I would love to have an opportunity to work in a system like that, because I can see how there is so much of love and respect amongst the whole club, and that's centered around who Jurgen Klopp is, Jurgen Klopp has always been someone, if you see the different club systems he's come from, he's creating the same environment everywhere, where and it's mainly because of the clarity he brings in to the whole system. So everybody is driven to one singular goal, and that's why they're able to achieve what they're doing. Because I think what he's done there is just another level of phenomenal, because I know there has been great teams of the past, but to do the kind of work that they've done, the systems that they've put in, and to predict the pathway that they have in this unpredictable environment where there is so much of money that has changed the course of the league, and he's actually made the definition possible. He's able to define that I'm going to win at this point, and that is just unbelievable. But it's all down to the clarity he brings into the club.
If it took him 6 years, imagine how much it will take in an Indian system, right? But you have to lay the foundation somewhere, right?
So, okay, so now we'll discuss one last topic, okay, because we can go on and on, okay, so like maybe we'll continue maybe next time or something. So one last topic, Sharath spoke about how more than maybe investing in marketing, it's better for teams to invest in something like sports science, okay. So what are the costs involved? Like you are an expert in sports science. Suppose a team wants to which do not have any background of having someone of sports science, okay, if they want to start maybe from tomorrow, what are the costs involved, or what do they have to do, or the what facilities they require?
Sure. Okay. So to be honest, it goes from level to level, which is different. For example, if it was a professional team like an ISL team or say an I-League team who wants to start competing in the ISL or an I-League second division club, we can look at how. So what I do is I work as head of performance for several clubs. One of the recent clubs that got over Punjab FC, I think they are called now, Round Glass Football Academy, which was actually structured by me from a performance standpoint. So I was with them initially. But if you see what they had done over there was that they had a Round Glass Foundation where they had actually raised money from their existing ID company, and they'd had, so the budgets there were so different, right? So I had a lot of money. So when we went in there, I said, okay, so basically I would look at least, so I look at more than anything, I look at coach to player ratios. I look at physio to player ratios. I look at the kind of environment they're going to be staying in terms of nutrition. So what kind of foods that they can afford? Are they a boarding kind of a hostel kind of a facility where all the young players are staying together? What's the downtime of the academy? How is the education taken care of? So all of these things influence how we can actually manage the structure. But then it needs to start off with saying player to coach ratio, which is really, really important. So that becomes more important at the grassroots level than in the higher level. Yes, at the higher level, but we can still manage because there's not that much of coaching points that needs to be drilled into at that level, right? It's at that point, and at the highest level, it's just only about managing players. You build a system. So we got at the highest level also, we also have viewership and all of these things. So the budgets can be more. But if you look at, so at that point, I might even look at saying a 10 lakh to a 20 lakh bracket where we can look at the number of teams, the number of players within the team. For example, there are clubs which are comfortable doing a 28-member first team and have 20-member youth teams as well. So now I would rather do if a budget of say a 10 lakhs was given to me, and if I said, okay, the quality of work of a physiotherapist has too many people to handle, he has one physiotherapist for a youth team, I would probably partner with a physiotherapy college in the region, actually have interns come and do their work, which I am looking at development of talent in a sports science environment. So this is actually a culture that developed me as well. So I kind of did that myself in other countries. But I looked at it and said, that is so possible here. So that's what I'm doing. But we can offload costs like this. So if it's only a youth setup, we can actually look at partnering with, say, a sports science university. Say Chennai has a sports science university. Nowadays, sports science has become really, really, it actually exploded, if I have to say. There are 300 new courses in India which have started up in sports science from a Khelo India movement as well. So there is a lot of funding that's coming through that process from the Modi government as well. So it's so a lot of universities start sports. So what would be best is actually for these clubs to kind of partner with them to have a steady culture where there is an influx of people coming in from there where you can actually offload costs with internship, but still provide the best amount of services for the people, for the players. Because at the end of the day, what I don't want to change is if I am setting 10 players to one physiotherapist as a norm, that means I know the quality of work that goes in. To be honest with you, right now there is one physio for 40 players, which is absolutely ridiculous. That means either you pay the person more, but even if you pay the person more, he's not going to be able to give quality service there. So that's why we need to play around saying, what are the budgets, what kind of things. So I would rather look at saying, this is the core group of players, they come from a decent training background, I might be able to offload costs elsewhere. So I pick and choose based on the budgets, yes, but at the same time, the primary components of injury prevention, nutrition, obviously monitored and tracked technical and tactical programming, where I don't decide that obviously, but I actually work with the main coaching staff to kind of develop how certain training norms in terms of the physical aspects of it. So I kind of, if it's a bigger club, obviously we have a lot of technology that we can use with GPS and all of that, so that it's an easier quantifiable system. But even the same thing can be done at a lower level, where we can have a coach engagement program where they understand what the sports science norms also are. So there's a system that works together to implement it. So then there is cohesion amongst the team to kind of do it. So there are many times I've actually had assistant coaches learn a lot more about strength and conditioning, so they can run it at the academy because they can't afford to have more an additional strength and conditioning coach. So they double time on it. So there was a time when we did that, and I actually had developed one of the assistant coaches became the senior team strength and conditioning coach later on, because there was so much interest and so much of time that he spent doing that. But you need to have a development structure there where we can develop our own as well. So I think partnering with universities, but you can actually offload costs. You can do it really well, but it's not only about it being 10, 20 lakhs, 50 lakhs. Yes, if you look at it as from an ISL standard, we look at 50 lakh, which is without the infra, which generally is a bracket for the sports science authority, which is what we would look at. But at the same time, we would also need to, like Chennai FC had SRMC, Sri Ramachandra Medical College, which had a performance center there. So I looked at it and I said, this is the biggest advantage Chennai FC has. They have a performance center set up already. So though it was an hour away from our way, we used to actually make our way there, do our recovery work there and get out of it. So when we built that structure so early on, everything kind of started falling in place by the second season itself. But it needs to be thinking in that direction, saying, performance is not only about the coaching that we do on the ground. It has to be how the coach can handle a strength and conditioning guy, have those components. It need not be that you need to have them full time. You could manage the consistency roles, but even there, a lot of them just think turning up, doing a training session and going is what it's all about. But I think an education of the coach of where his continual involvement has to happen is something that needs to happen. So there is always, and in Bangalore actually there is a new culture where a lot of the clubs are partnering with established physiotherapy centers and things like that, where they're having players going there. So they're able to offload costs like that, which is not a bad idea. But then if they're not integrated into the on-ground work, then there is always a gap between the return to sport that happens. So this has been an issue that India has been facing for a while now, where they've been doing rehab in an isolated unit, but they go back and start playing, and there is a gap between the two. So, but I see that there is a change in the way, but I think the change can happen with a lot more education of coaches on how to use these personnel as well. So it need not always be about the cost. It can be offloaded in different ways, but it's about the thinking that all of these together, these performance pillars, adding to end performance. So that's actually where it needs to be.
So if you want to, I mean, I can add to it, because if you want to see like how much do you want to invest or what do you want to invest, sports science need not really be like rocket science. It can be really simple as well. It is only about forecasting the business of football right as well. Now, when we looked at, when you talked about infrastructure, we were doing business with the infrastructure rather than the business of football. The business of football is not necessarily as complicated, but you have to have the right mindset and the right forecasting in order to say, okay, I'm going to start today, and where am I going to get my results in it? Again, it's a process of clarity. Saying now, if Klopp took 6 years to build a team which will sustain with even average players, it is the same. It is the same process, because it's a process of scientific clarity, right? So when you ask me how much of what to invest, now I'll give you our example. We started investing in the process 3 years ago. Okay, did we invest huge? Maybe, but it was over a period of 3 years. Now, what did the other clubs do at the same time? They were buying the players for the same amount of cost. Year number 1, probably we were higher on the investment end. But come year number 3, each professional team spends about 20 to 60 lakhs on buying players. Okay, whereas I invested at the start, say 20, 30 lakhs, which I invested at the start, will give me reward in the 3rd and 4th year, because now I have a system where I don't have to buy at all. My buying players budget is very low. It is hardly 10% of the lowest in the league, and still I can give a run for the top teams in the league, and which is going to create your viewership, which is going to create that emotional connect. Saying a team without anything also, or without buying players also, are doing something at the top level, right? So that's there you have it.
So, you have any last words to say for the podcast, Sharath?
No, thanks a lot for talking to us. I think we have touched upon a lot of things that is required in Indian football, or at least understand the problems that every Indian football club or a player is facing. And I think it's great that it's going out on your channel. Thanks a lot.
Abhishek, you have any?
For having us speaking, because I think you've given us a good platform to kind of even come out here and speak, because it's something that I think, like I said, it's an education aspect. So I think any platform which is giving us, and so I thank you for giving us this opportunity to do this.
So, Sharath and Abhishek, thank you so much for talking to me, and we wish you all the best for your future campaigns with your club,
you.
and hope we can talk maybe next time about your club also, because you all didn't mention anything about your club a lot. Like we barely touched about the story of the club, why you started, nothing. Like you didn't even touch about that. So maybe next time we can talk about your club more and how you have given so many players, like you mentioned, like in comparison to
I
other.
hope you are doing well as well.
Yeah. So on that note, I'll have to say bye now, because it's been a very long podcast, and hope we can talk again soon.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy.